All right, good afternoon once again. And yes, of course, before we begin the program, we would like to revisit our instructions for the afternoon. Kindly mute your microphones and switch off your videos for better quality. You may raise your questions in the chat box, and the moderator will take your questions to the speaker. Let everything you do be done as if it makes a difference. A quote by William James. A wonderful afternoon and a warm welcome to day 4 of the FDP, Integrated Learning and the NEP 2020, organized by the IQAC, St. Francis de Sales College, Bangalore. Our speakers over the last 3 days have clearly made a difference in what they have shared. Knowledge is the key to success, and we have been given a diverse set of knowledge for the last 3 days. Today, the 4th day of our FTP, and we would like to welcome everyone to session 6. A special note of welcome and appreciation to Dr. Bhavani, Principal, Surana College, Bangalore, for having accepted our invitation for this afternoon. Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of St. Francis de Sales College, once again, we render a hearty welcome to everyone. As we are about to begin, let us invoke the blessings of God through a short prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Well, yes, today we are glad to have with us this afternoon Dr. Bhavani to handle our afternoon session. I now request Professor Ramandeep to introduce our speaker for the day. Professor Ramandeep, I suppose you're speaking on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Bhavani is a principal of Surana College, Bangalore. She is an academician with a passion towards institution building and been in leadership position for over a decade. She has completed her MCom, PGDBA, MPhil, PhD. She has completed 3 level of proficiency course in strategy and international business from Strategic Management Forum and IIM Kozhikode. She has done certification from Capstone on Business Simulation and Six Thinking Hats. She has worked as a research associate for the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. She has authored books, chapters for books, research paper in national and international journals, invited speakers at several forums. She has been a member of Board of Studies and Board of Examination of universities. She has been an educator for PhD for Christ University and CMR University. She has worked as an expert member for NAC. Ma'am has coached and mentored several young academicians. She has won award as a best teacher and awarded 100 most dedicated professors by the World Education Congress. She is also one of the few academicians to have successfully completed the Iron Lady program certified by the Tata Institute for Social Science. The Higher Education Review recognized her as a top 10 women leader in education industry 2020. She is also the recipient of National Education Excellence Award for Outstanding Contribution in Education Domain for the year 2020. I welcome you, ma'am, and I request you to take over the session. Over to ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ramandeep, for such a lovely introduction. Thank you very much once again. So, a very good afternoon, everybody. And I thank Reverend Dr. Roy, Principal, Reverend Father Gito Jose, and Professor Maya Matthew, IQAC Coordinator, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with my fellow fraternity members. I also thank Professor Archana and Dr. Tharini for the coordination that you have made for this program. I thank you so much for all this. So I'm happy to share a few of my thoughts on the national education policy. And give me a moment while I share my presentation. Just a moment. Madam, I think, will you be able to share the presentation? I have already shared it with you.
All right, ma'am. Could you hold on for a moment?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Because looks like I'm able to only share whatever is on my screen.
All right. We're just looking into it, ma'am.
I'll try again, just a moment, in case I'm
Sure,
able
ma'am.
to.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah,
so,
I
right?
suppose. No, it was visible, ma'am. It was actually loading. You were able to share the screen.
Just a moment, just a moment. I'm also trying. But what I see is that it is loading back onto this. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. It's loading right now.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Are you able to see this?
Yes, very much.
Perfect.
You
Thank
could
you.
also put it as a slideshow, and yes,
Will do
perfect,
that.
ma'am. You
Thank
can
you.
go ahead.
Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to all of you present here. And I'm so happy that we are talking about something so relevant and so much required for the current scenario that we are in and the new regimen that we are going to be seeing in the months to come. In a recent discussion that I've had with several people who have been involved in the dissemination of the NEP policy, I see that latest by the December of 2021, the policy will get rolling, and to a large extent, it will be a full-fledged one. So today, I am going to be sharing my thoughts on the curriculum and the teacher competence building for the new regime. So how prepared are we? Are we ready to gear up for what is expected in the days to come? Or are we going to spend some time to look back at what we have been doing till now, what is in store for us in future, and how do we bridge this gap in the few months that we have time? So let me take this forward. NEP is not something which is totally new to the country. Over 3 different sessions, these policies and procedures were actually revisited. Once in the year 1968, second time in 1986, and now in the year 2020. Now, more or less, all these policy matters talk about the same thing. But however, this particular policy that we saw in 2020 has been more rigorous and has tried to encompass every element that has to be taken care of in the education system. So right from the school level to the higher education, every parameter that is considered to be creating a world-class institution has been taken care of. So the mission that we see of the education policy is to encompass the flourishing future of Indian education system to compete with global standards. So here we are clearly coming back a full circle where we speak about one of our very ancient universities like the Nalanda University or the Takshashila University. And here we talk about how do we regain the momentum that we had created centuries ago. So the idea that we are talking about in the entire policy is how do we make sure that our students are competing with global entities, that our institutions are competing at a global level, and our faculties are going to share platforms with global faculties in the days to come. whenever we talk about institution, academics, teachers are definitely the key and at the core of it. So even the policy has brought about in several aspects, in several chunks across the policy, you will see that the teachers have been given the core focus and they are the key to the implementation of the NEP. So without teachers playing a prominent role, there is no way this NEP can become operational or can become successful in the months to come. The flow of discussion that we will have today is number one, we're going to be looking at some of the key points. And please note, I am not going to be discussing on all elements of NEP. I'm only going to be focusing on those points that are relevant to my area of discussion today. The second thing that we're going to be talking about is about the curriculum and the pedagogy that we may have to adapt and adopt in the months to come. And finally, I'm going to be looking at the competency building of faculties in order to face the kind of changes and the transition in the industry that we are going to be seeing. So I'm sure all of us are talking a lot about the Industry 4.0. And till now, we have only spoken about all other industries except for education as a sector. One reason possibly is that education is typically a social element in the country. It is supposed to be a basic right of a student, and thereby maybe we are not categorizing education under Industry 4.0. However, if Industry 4.0 has to be thriving and has to be successful, education, which is going to be the feeder for this industry, has to be successful, has to be thriving, and we have to make sure that we pull up our socks and give or deliver to the industry that we are going to be looking at. So I am going to be taking some excerpts from the policy, and I'm trying to focus on how the intent of this policy is all about teachers and the profession. I'm going to be reading it out because I'm taking it out from the policy and I would like to discuss it more. The teacher must be at the center of the fundamental reforms in the education system. So which means the policy puts the teacher at the center. Now there may be a couple of you who may be thinking, isn't it the student who has to be at the center? In fact, these two share a similar platform. We also have to be student-centric, but student centricity should be parallel to the teacher centricity. So the teacher must necessarily be at the center of the fundamental reform. So whatever reforms that we are bringing about, unless at the grassroots level, the teachers' reforms are taking place, unless we bring about a change in the kind of delivery mechanisms, the kind of academic systems that we live in, the kind of evaluation, the kind of assessments that we are talking about, nothing much can change at the periphery. I'm sure all of us are aware of that. And that's the reason why the policy puts teacher at the heart of it. The new education policy must help re-establish teachers at all levels as the most respected and essential member of the society. I'm sure all of us have seen several WhatsApps doing rounds, especially on the Teachers' Day, talking about how it are the highest paid citizens of a nation. Now, we always have been thinking, my God, why have we not done that? Right? And I'm sure this policy is driving towards that, but there is a condition there. Now, if you want to really be at that level, how prepared are we? Are we professionally equipped to maintain ourselves in that quality and deliver to the global standards that the policy is actually looking out for? The third point in the entire education policy that focuses on teachers is that it must empower. That means the system, the policies, the procedures that we follow must do everything possible to empower the teachers and help them to do their job as effectively as possible. So here, the focus is that the teacher has to be empowered. That means you have to provide them sufficient autonomy, sufficient freedom to design their own curriculum, to deliver it in the best possible fashion, because each of our audiences are different. The kind of pedagogy you may follow for an urban audience may not be the same as the rural audience, may not be the same when we deal with a multilinguistic audience. So when we talk about it, we are very particularly focusing on empowerment of a teacher, giving them that autonomy, giving them that freedom but with accountability. This is the first time a policy talks about accountability of the teachers too. So on one hand, give you the freedom, give you the autonomy to do things that is best suited to deliver the course, but at the same time be accountable and make sure that you're professionally qualified to do what we are supposed to be doing in a classroom. The fourth point is that the new education policy must help recruit the very best and the brightest to enter the teaching professions at all levels. So here we're talking about meritocracy. There is nothing else that is going to be coming into picture in the days to come except the kind of meritocracy that is in picture. So young, bright fellow academicians will be a welcome. There is going to be a huge surge of faculty professionals who are probably going to engage with us from the industry too, because a lot of the policy talks about how industry and academia has to be blended. So there is going to be a call for a lot of practicing industry professionals who probably want to or wish to engage with academia, maybe teach themselves or help us collaborate and then start guiding the students into becoming good citizens, which industry and the society is looking out for. Now, some of the key points, so I come to the first part of my discussion, that some of the key points that are relevant to our discussion are, number one, the entire system of education that we are going to be seeing henceforth is going to be multidisciplinary and holistic in its nature. So which means to say, when you're dealing with any program as such, it could be an undergraduate or a postgraduate program, we are not just looking at super specializations anymore. Now, there are a lot of discussions that came up in several platforms that we were discussing about NEP, that NEP has probably diluted the education system, or it is probably going to make a student jack of all trade rather than making him a super specialized into one element. However, the policy is very clear in saying that if you're a science student, there is no need for you to do all courses in science. The focus will still be on science. The focus will still be on humanities. The focus will still be on commerce and management or computer science, as the case may be. But a student will also be allowed to move into different angles and explore the possible opportunities that he may come across in future. So for example, he can blend sports, he can blend NCC as one of it, he can blend dance, drama, theater as one of it. So which means that an absolutely multidisciplinary approach is required. And as teachers, we have to be geared up for that, especially for those who are going to be preparing curriculum. In the days to come, which we are going to take a little later, in the days to come, when you are going to be given a graded autonomy, freedom to design your own curriculum, and the fact that the NEP says that there is an easy entry and exit point for every student. So he can come after 1 year, he might decide to exit. He may study 1 year in SFS college, 1 year in Surana college, and probably graduate from the third college. Now, all this is possible. So you have been given every possible facility to engage. So imagine how high the student engagement should be at the college, because you will want to keep this boy or girl inside your campus for 3 years. Not as a part of a rigor, as a part of the complete holistic development. You're not going to be forcing a child to stay, but keep the entire curriculum so engaging that it should be best in class for a student to complete his education. So we are looking at unity and integrity of all the knowledge bases that we have seen. So curriculum planning is going to be quite a challenge. The next point is the emphasis on conceptual understanding rather than rote learning. I'm sure as teachers, all of us have faced this challenge, that at the end of the day, however enticing your class may have been, about a topic, at the end of the day, the student still lands up with a guide in his hand or some notes in his hand, and you feel very disappointed that all that 60 hours that you have spent in a classroom probably ends up in a particular set of notes. Now, this is something that we are going to bring in a change, and it is a fresh breather for all teachers like us. because this is going to allow us to evaluate a student conceptually and probably strengthen his domain expertise rather than just asking the same questions. I've seen many students who come and say, don't worry about passing, ma'am, because if I see the last 10 years question papers or 5 years question papers, I know what to concentrate on and what not to concentrate on. Now we need to go away from the system, and that's exactly what NEP is focusing on. The third element that NEP focused on is the creativity and critical thinking. Now, what I mean by creativity and critical thinking is thinking out of the box. Now, we have enough number of people who follow the same route every day. We need students who can think out of the box, come out with innovative ideas, bring out new decisions that is typically out of the box, and start giving solutions to the problem that the society is already facing. And these kids are capable of doing that. I always believe that somewhere between high school and higher education, the students we have been successful in killing their creativity. What I mean to say is, I'm sure you have some high school going child at home. And if you see their projects, it is so very enthralling. You will see them doing it for so much of heart and so much of passion towards it, because everything is about creativity. Everything is about critical thinking. They take decisions. They're able to see the right and the wrong. They're able to take the risks and give their answers. They do projects. But somewhere in between, we start killing their creativity and saying, no, that is not the answer. These are not the steps. I don't want you to give you the exact answer. I want you to show me the steps. So we give them, or we introduce them to rote learning. And these 2 years are considered 11th and 12th, to be precise. We would have given them so much of inputs into rote learning that they find it easy. It's so easy to mug up something and go write an examination, because they know at the end of it, that's what matters. Right? So in NEP, the whole focus has been on creativity and critical thinking. Critical thinking is where we try to understand beyond the concept. So suppose I'm teaching the concept of recruitment in a class. Then the critical thinking part of it is, what else can we do to attract more number of applications to apply for a specific job in a company? Is there any other way I can look at beyond the regularly followed policies or regularly followed procedures to do recruitment in an organization? So that critical thinking, the pros and cons of a specific methodology of recruitment, a lot of things can actually be discussed when when the critical thinking aspects come into the class. Then comes the most important part of NEP, and we talk about outstanding research as a core requisite. Please note, it is a core requisite. So just having qualification is not going to be sufficient anymore. Just being a PhD is not sufficient anymore. You have to apply that PhD into doing research work and bring out publications and make your classes more meaningful, so as to again engage with this student. So for outstanding education and development, the NEP has recognized that research has to be inculcated. And you'll be surprised to know that when you look at the statistics of research contributions that Indian institutions are making vis-a-vis other institutions across the globe, we are at its lowest ebb. And that's probably the reason why we haven't been able to uplift our education system to the kind of culture that exists abroad. So much of prominence is given to research in any other foreign university. And this is time for us. So it is the time that we try to build back our skill sets into research and start looking at how to engage with new topics, how to engage students also into research. So this doesn't talk about just faculty research. NEP is also talking about how do you build a research culture in students too. This research acumen that we are going to build inside the classroom is actually going to help us a win-win situation. I've seen many of my postgraduate students coming out with beautiful topics, and when with little guidance, they're able to come out with wonderful papers. Now, this is something that we are expecting from all the classes, whether it is undergraduate or postgraduate. The next point that we have to be again critical about is that the policy allows collaborations with foreign universities. For a teacher, this is a win-win situation. Now, the reason for this is, number one, it allows student exchange programs. It allows joint certification programs. It allows faculty exchanges. It allows joint research collaborations. We can do a lot of wonders when we collaborate with our counterparts, not only because of the funds available with them, but most importantly because of the kind of exchange of ideas and thoughts. And when you engage with two faculties from totally different backgrounds, you will see that several vistas of new research will come up. So this is something that as teachers we have to be prepared for, because you are in a stage now where you are strengthening your wings. You're strengthening your wings in such a way for the next couple of months that when this actually happens in the next 1 or 2 years, please note the entire NEP will be operational in just about a year or two. And to a large extent in Karnataka, at least, I have seen that the policy is in full swing. And to a large extent, by December, everything is going to be in place. At least 80% of it will be in place. Some of the other points that we need to focus is that life skills has been focused on in the national education policy. So life skills such as communication, cooperation, teamwork, and resilience. And please note, these are not some separate subject that we can teach to the students. These have to be inculcated and brought about in the kind of pedagogy that we are going to be using in our classrooms. So when we start allowing students to do research and present themselves, we're actually building them on the reading skills, writing skills, listening skills, and then talking skills, of course. And then cooperation, because you are allowing multiple collaborations to happen. You need to collaborate, you need to cooperate with the parties of the other institution maybe. Teamwork, because you're working with multiple people from differing backgrounds. And of course, resilience, the capacity to fail and still get back to business at the earliest. Now, resilience is something that COVID has taught us all. And this is a beautiful word that every industry is talking about today. Build resilience. And education sector is no far away from there. The next focus of NEP is on the regular formative assessment for learning rather than the summative assessment. So we are not going to be taking the end of the term examination. We need to make sure that the formative assessments, so throughout the year, through various interventions, through various parameters, we are going to be indulging in the learning process and evaluation process side by side. Extensive use of technology in teaching and learning. I really wish to take this example. About 10 years back, we had an intervention from a US-based company, which came to me and said, hey, we want to build a flipped classroom in your institution. And then when he explained the concept, it seemed quite nice because all the pre-reads that we give in a classroom can be easily done through a flipped classroom. Apart from the reading content, you can just introduce the session that you're going to do the next day by a 5-minute video, a 10-minute video. The student will listen to it at its ease and then come back to your class. Imagine how engaging it will be. Now, 10 years earlier, when I had to go tell my colleagues, hey, you all have laptops, all your laptops have cameras in it. Can you please just record yourself for about 10 minutes or even 5 minutes and give me this recording so that we can try to see if we can work something with this company. Trust me, none of my colleagues did it because they were so camera shy, number one. They felt very conscious because they were speaking to an inhuman person called the laptop. And 10 years ahead, during the last 1 year, I see the kind of transition that has happened. Whether you liked it or not, we are all speaking to the cameras, like I am doing today. Use of technology. We didn't even know what Zoom meant. We didn't know what Gmeet was. We didn't know what Microsoft Teams meant. But then our transition has happened quickly. We are academicians after all. You're knowledgeable. So the transition did not take much time, except that the internet had to support you. We had all the possible knack that we had to use. Of course, we missed students in the class. We missed the physical interactions. But then there was nothing else we could do but to engage them virtually. So extensive use of technology. This blended classroom that we are going to be doing is going to be the order of the day. In the days to come, you will have different kinds of blended learning techniques that we will be using both inside and outside the classroom. And as a teacher, I think this is something, again, we have to be geared up for. And last point that I want to talk about as a quick point in NEP is that teachers and faculty at the heart of the learning process, as I have already mentioned earlier, throughout the document, NEP focuses and reiterates that the faculty member is at the core of the education sector. So we talk a lot of things about their recruitment. Imagine for the first time in history, I suppose, that there is an open advertisement which is given by the government of Karnataka for appointment of principals. This is for the first time I'm saying. You might not be inside the government regime at all, but you are eligible to go and apply. And if you're selected, you go as a principal. Very few that I have come across. Continuous professional development. This is another thing that we bring about. In school education, they are more strict, they are more stringent. They say that minimum 50 hours of professional development has to be showcased during the year. And there is a framework which has been set by the board which will look at what the teacher is doing throughout this year. Positive working environments, because it has to be an environment of collaboration, it has to be an environment of cooperation. We might turn out to be clusters in the days to come. If our number of students are not going to be more than 3,000, there are high possibility that we are going to become cluster organizations. So 2 or 3 colleges will come together to form one element or one institution. So we need to collaborate, we need to cooperate, we need to work in positive environments. We're learning from each other, learning the best practices and applying them inside your classrooms. And of course, service conditions. There are a lot of people who suffer in this profession too because of contractual appointments. They don't, get their appointment orders in time, etc. These service conditions have also been catered to in the National Education Policy. Now, NEP recommends a complete restructuring of the entire education domain in India. So the structuring or the restructuring is happening in the sense from the aimless and inflexible system that we are in right now. For example, a student studying in Bangalore University finds it very difficult to take a transfer to Bangalore North University. For different reasons, we are the same university trifurcated into 3. However, there are hurdles in between that the student faces because there is inflexibility in the system. After he studies one semester, if he feels that this is not the course I wanted to do, I want to move into something else, there is no flexibility available to him. Why that? Suppose a child has chosen a specific language. After the first semester, we don't even allow him to change the language. Forget about the program. So we are trying to have a transition from an aimless and inflexible system to becoming a more progressive, flexible, multidisciplinary, technology-based, and skill-focused education system. The idea is to produce competent, creative, skilled, employable, and ethical learners. Please note, all these have been taken care of in our new education policy. So when we talk about this particular parameter, now we say that these are the key indicators of successful candidate in the college or in a university. So this candidate who is going to graduate from us should be competent. That means his domain expertise, his knowledge has to be good. Number 2, he has to be creative. That means he has to be skilled enough to think out of the box, to come out with original, innovative solutions to a problem, and be capable of applying his theoretical knowledge into practical elements. Skilled. When we say skill, we are referring to all those skill sets which a student should necessarily have in order to succeed in that particular line of career that he chooses. 4, employable. Employability is just not about getting a degree. I'm sure all of us understand that employability is a lot about soft skills too. So having soft skills throughout the journey of his student life, and most importantly, ethical learners. So the whole value system ethos has been inculcated in this education system, and this is possible only with a robust curriculum and an innovative pedagogy. Now, if we don't change curriculum, if we are not given the permission to change the curriculum, let me give you this example. When a student goes abroad, for example, a law student goes to Australia for higher education. Now, what we don't understand is the student is very happy to go abroad and do his education masters there. But there's no way he will be able to come back to India to do a local practice or a litigation, because this child will probably want to look at only a multinational where he might be dealing with international laws. So we have to have a robust curriculum to make sure that the kind of impact that we want to see in a graduate is all inculcated in our curriculum, and the pedagogy that you are going to be using in your classroom is going to help you achieve that particular parameter that we have set for ourselves. Now let's look at the curriculum. So I'm moving on to the second part of my discussion, and that's the curriculum for the new regime. So when we look at the curriculum for the new regime, I'm looking at two elements. Number one, I'm looking at the structure. Now the structure talks about a stage-wise mechanism for granting graded autonomy to colleges. So which means to say, if you have been a NAC accredited college with A or A+, you're bound to get autonomy very soon. Now, this is going to be helping you to have academic freedom. So when I say autonomy, you might still be an affiliated college. You might still come under XYZ university, but you have the academic freedom to design the curriculum the way you want, to set up the delivery mechanism the way you want. That means design your own pedagogy, have your own assessment system that might best help bring out the best out of the child. The second structural change that you will see in the new regime is the overall higher education sector will aim to have an integrated higher education system. So we are not just looking at one pocket or one compartment. We are looking at higher education, we are looking at professional education as well as vocational education. To a large extent, people who do vocational education is considered out of the entire gambit because you feel that they're not doing anything big. For example, somebody is doing a vocational course on carpentry, somebody is doing a vocational course in plumbing. They are not even considered or treated within the regimen of our education system. But in the new regime that you will see that all three of it, so higher education plus professional education plus the vocational education, all this will come under the broad category of a higher education system. Let me move to the curriculum and pedagogy. What does this new regime tell us? Number one, we are moving towards more multidisciplinary undergraduate education. Now, I want to throw a little light on this. Now, let's take an example. We are having a BBA program. As per the NEP, you have an entry exit at every year. So 1 year he completes, he is capable of quitting, and you have to give him a certificate. At the end of second year, you give him a diploma. End of third year, he is a graduate. 3 or even 4. So if it is a 4-year graduation degree, then it is going to be a degree plus research. So that's what it is all going to be. So we have a choice. We take either a 3-year program or a 4-year program. So in this, we are moving towards multidisciplinary. So 3 things that we need to keep in mind. Number one, it has to be multidisciplinary. That means you have to bring in several elements into your program. Number 2, you have to ensure that you have crafted your curriculum in such a way that the student is capable of carrying a certificate at the end of 1 year, diploma at the end of 2 years, and a graduation degree certificate at the end of 3 years. So the way in which we are going to plan the courses, or in other words, subjects in each semester, in each year, we have to carefully plan it so that when you say this student has a certificate of management, then this boy or girl should be actually capable of studying everything that was supposed to be meant to come under the certification course. The second thing is moving towards faculty and institutional autonomy. So both ways the structural change has been made, and it will come. So what is it? You have the autonomy or the freedom to design your own curriculum. So there will be a framework. We cannot go away from a boundary that has been drawn, but within the boundary, it's your game. So if the stadium is given to you, whether you play cricket or football or any other game, it's the choice of the teacher, because the teacher knows what is most important for the audience that you are catering to. So you will have faculty autonomy plus the institutional autonomy. The institution as such also has the freedom to recruit people of their choice, to have people from the industry to come and teach. And we in turn will have the capability to collaborate with both industry as well as institutions, foreign universities, you name it. We can do multiple things when we have an autonomy as an institution. The third one, most important for teachers, is the revamping of the curriculum. Now, it doesn't mean that the existing curriculum is bad, definitely not. I'm sure all universities have tried to gear up with many things, and they have been quite successful in changing their syllabus once in a while. However, we are looking at very dynamic curriculum setting. For all you know, every year we might want to look back at what the industry requires and then create it, tweak it, or maybe take that particular subject out. Now, this revamping curriculum will be in our hands at the institutional level as well as the faculty level. So imagine if you have to bring in the best in class courses into your program, then you need to know what's happening around us. Then comes the pedagogy. Teaching pedagogy is again very personal to an audience and the teacher. Unless you know your students well, you cannot design the pedagogy. Unless you know the level of your audience, you will not be able to deliver the best. And even in that audience, you will have the categories of fast learners, average students, and slow learners. Now, how do you design pedagogy to make sure that all three are engaged in your class? So this pedagogy, as I said, is extremely personal to a teacher, and it is also going to be very specific to an audience that we deal with. Assessments and student support. Assessment is, again, as I said, it is going to be formative assessment. We are going to see through the student's growth over that entire semester or year, and then start intervening and assessing his performance. And for all you know, the student need not even know that he is being assessed for something. So that is how imbibed the assessment should be, or the evaluation system should be in the next, in the next semesters. Now, NEP again talks a lot about enculturation of teacher empowerment. It says that if you want to have a reform, if you want to make NEP successful, the teachers have to have the freedom and control over their work. So only when you give them freedom, only when you allow them to control their own work, only then you can see NEP happening well. And autonomy, innovative teaching methods, and close collaboration with among the teacher community. Only these three things will actually empower a teacher to do his or her best in the college or in the classroom. I actually like this particular curriculum-centered strategic planning model because we are in the second part of our discussion. Now, not that we are moving away from the learner-centric curriculum, not at all. But we are still talking about the curriculum centered. Now, when I want to design a curriculum, which you are going to be doing it very soon, suppose somebody comes and tells you, you need to change your curriculum, or you need to have a curriculum for yourself by 2022, we need to start planning for it. What comes in the first semester? What comes in the second semester? What subjects will retain? What subjects will not be retained? What subjects shall we bring in from somewhere else? Can we collaborate? Can we add a MOOCs program in between? Can we allow one course of the entire semester courses? Let the student do at his self-paced way, and just at the end of the day, get me back the certificate. It could be from Swayam, it could be your NPTEL certifications, it could be from IM MOOCs, whatever it is. Coursera, you define. So there are so many ways in which we can bring out a more dynamic curriculum planning. So in this, if you see, at the center is the curriculum. And as a teacher, you have to keep several things in mind. Number one, you have to define what are the key performance indicators. Now, what I mean by key performing indicators is I'm going to be looking at this skill qualification framework. What I mean by skill qualification framework is, and this is again discussed in length in the NEP. So skill qualification framework is where the students will have to be mapped. You actually map the skill competency that is required by a student. If you have to call him as a BSc graduate or a BBA graduate or a BCom graduate or a humanities graduate. For example, if he has to be a student of, say, BA psychology or BSc psychology, then there are certain specific skills that he must acquire over these 3 years or 4 years. So the first thing that we define in the curriculum is what are the key parameters, or what are those skill set that I want to have the student acquire in the next 3 or 4 years. Once your key performance indicators are defined, then we do an external environmental assessment. We try to see from the industry, what is this industry expecting us? Is this curriculum what I am referring to an old one an outdated one? Has something new come into this picture? Has some new techniques and tools come which I haven't been able to imbibe into my curriculum? If so, where can I imbibe? Can I imbibe it inside the curriculum as a part of my curriculum, or should it be given as a value-added course? After you do an external environment assessment, which can come from various ways, your alumni can help you, your placement officers can help you get some information, your companies where the students are getting placed, they can get you some information. A lot of ways in which you can invite the people from industry and academia who can help you with this. The next thing that we see is the internal environment assessment. When I say internal environment, we are talking about us, the ecosystem that is existing within the college. So when you look at the ecosystem within the college, you will come to know what resources do we have in terms of financial resources, the physical infrastructure resources, the teacher resources, the research-based resources, the library, all these put together form our internal ecosystem. Now, in case there is a mismatch between any one of this, the key performance indicator, external and internal, there are two things that you must be doing. Number one, either you upskill your faculties and make sure that they live up to that, or bring in new faculties, or you make sure that we change the key parameters that we are looking at, which is not the scene that we should be thinking. So the most likely situation is define the key parameters, assess the environment, upgrade the faculty or upskill the faculty so that they will be able to live up to the industry expectations too. Then we come to the strategic operational elements, the action plan. So once that the new curriculum is defined, it is designed, it is planned, how are we going to implement it? How many hours of teaching? How many hours of theory classes? How many hours of practicals? Should I engage this child into the industry for some time? All this can come. And then the implementation and managing the entire enterprise. The entire way, the evaluation system will keep happening. This evaluation system will help us to make sure that we are not losing our track. Anywhere that we are losing our track, the entire thing will fall flat because we are not able to deliver what we promised. Now, I want to also give some insights into the kind of institutional restructuring that we are seeing in the days to come, maybe I would say years to come, because it's not easy to divide or have a continuum of institutions or universities which are completely teaching intensive, universities or institutions which are completely research intensive, and somewhere in between. You will have three categories of institutions or universities. University is any institution which has multidisciplinary courses or programs with them. So when we talk about competency building, now you have to map yourself as a teacher and see at the present, where do you think you can fit in? Because all that I'm talking about from here is henceforth, futuristic, 1 year down the line. Where do you think we fit in? Are we going to fit in only in teaching intensive institutions? Are we partially good at research? So we are going to fit into teaching and research? Or are we going to be completely into research? I love teaching, but I would rather be in research because I know that the best in class ideas come out when I do my research. Depending on this, you're going to be choosing the institutions with which you work, because the NEP plans to categorize the institutions in one of these ways. But the best part about the NEP is that there is no watertight compartments. Institution which was teacher intensive or teaching intensive can slowly upgrade itself to teaching cum research intensive institution. Slowly they can move into completely research. So there is an easy upgradation that can happen over a period of time. So there is no such watertight compartment. Now, what are the challenges? Now that we know these are all that is coming up from the NEP, these are all expected out of us. Let's look at the challenges ahead. The first challenge that we all should understand is that as a teacher, I must be engaged in a continuous learning and upgrading professional efficacy. This is something that I see missing in a couple of people. At least about 20-30% of the teachers probably don't know why they were in this profession. They probably came here by default. They probably don't have the passion that drives them to become a teacher. And therefore, everything becomes a routine for them. But the 70%, the chunk of the teachers who have come into this industry have come because they're passionate about it, not because they didn't find any other job. Now, such passionate teachers will always engage themselves in continuous learning. And this learning can happen both formally, informally. This learning can happen within the classroom, outside the classroom. This learning can happen when you're attending a conference, when you're attending a seminar. This learning can happen anywhere. But the learning has to happen, and you need to upgrade your professional efficacy from day to day. Otherwise, we are going to be left out very soon. We're going to be witnessing a revolution in education and learning methodology. As I said 1 year earlier, if somebody had to ask me to get into a Zoom meeting, we probably didn't know what it meant. All of us faced problems of Zoom bombing in the initial days till we got control over the entire technology. So the learning methodology will change. There's going to be a huge revolution in the way education will take place. I will tell you one other reason why. In the days to come, every institution, especially a private university and an autonomous institution, is capable of giving or granting distance learning also. You can come out with any distance learning program as long as you have the permission to do it. Now, you're going to be seeing more number of students in the days to come who will probably feel that distance learning is easier because it is easily available everywhere. You will see a lot of your alumni engaging back with you in case you had a center for continuing education or center for continuing professional education. You'll see a lot of your alumni coming back to you and saying that, hey, I want to upskill myself in this. So is the college providing with this opportunity? So you need to have a requirement of credible, sound, and knowledgeable teachers who not only think about the current, but will also be capable of assessing what the future needs is going to be. Then there's going to be a huge demand in the professional teachers, basically because when you see that there are 3 different levels of universities or institutions, somebody with research and teaching skills will definitely see themselves in a different pay band altogether. So your pay scale barometer will definitely increase in the years to come. Then it asks for, the NEP asks for, of students. May I request one of the faculty members to kindly mute yourself? Thank you. So the NEP facilitates a perfect blending of both learning as well as practicing. As I said earlier, somebody who's been in the industry working for so long might want to get into teaching, and they're welcome. Similarly, a teacher who has spent say 5 or 10 years in a campus teaching can actually move into a professional development and move into the industry and blend both. So that way what happens is you're able to bring in the industry experience and bring it back to your classroom, which is going to be a great learning experience for everybody around you. And another challenge that you see is the research and innovation part of it. Most of us haven't even heard of patents. Very few teachers that I see, especially in the science mode, have slowly started moving towards understanding the concepts of IPR, understanding the concepts of patents. The more the patents you have, the more it is an indicator that your research is very vibrant in the college or the institution. So this is another thing that we have probably not done so far. We have been writing papers for conference, publishing it. It's only now that everybody is talking about Scopus, UGC Index, Scopus journals, Hedge Index, a lot of things that we are only hearing for the first time probably if you were a young teacher, right? So you need to understand this culture of research. Building this research acumen is very, very important for you as a teacher. However, and whichever the stage of teaching, proficiency you're in, it's important for us. So there's nothing wrong in starting the entire thing. So start with a small one. Look out for journals which are locally available. For example, ABC institution has their own in-house journal. Let's start with that. Let the journey begin. Once you start writing papers, your first piece of paper is going to be a kickstart for you. You will start writing more number of papers. And if you really have to do a great job, publish at the Harvard Business Review or publish at an international journal, you will actually be able to publish only 1 or maximum 2 papers in a year. You can't do more than that because there's so much of research that goes into writing that paper, right? Now, I move to the last part of my discussion, and that's about the competency mapping. Now, what we mean by competency mapping is that as a teacher, I know that these are the expected parameters for me to excel as a professional. On the other hand, this is where I am. So if you map yourself, you don't need any consultant to do this for you. All you need to do it is yourself. Map yourself on various parameters. And when you map yourself, it is easy for you to know what are the gray areas. Where do you think you need to spend more time? Where do you think you need to spend that 2-3 hours in a week? Not more than that. You just need to spend 2-3 hours in a week to upskill yourself, to upgrade yourself. And this is something that you're doing for yourself. It's not for anybody else. So this conceptual framework that I see, which was given by two professors, is an excellent way for us to map what competency levels we have right now, what competency levels are expected, and how do we bridge the gap between the two? Because that's going to be a game changer for all the teachers that we are talking about today. So when you look at professional competencies, we are first looking at the content and pedagogical knowledge. How good are you in your domain expertise? It's a very disheartening thing that in many institutions, many subject allocations are not done on a scientific method. That means, suppose there is a particular subject on, microbiology. Of course, thankfully, in science subjects, no other teacher can teach those papers except if you are a MSc in microbiology. But in all others generic papers like commerce and management, you will see multiple people talking or teaching multiple subjects. And for all you know, they have never touched that subject before. So they are skeptical to go into a class because unless they thoroughly prepare themselves and be aware of it. Today, the classroom is a very vibrant one. As you're teaching, there is a student who will probably Google it out to say whether you're doing the right thing or not. So you better be upright about what you know and be aware of what you don't know. So the first thing in competency mapping is the content and pedagogical knowledge. Do you know how to teach the content? Do you understand the pedagogy that is required to teach that content? So delivery mechanism is as equally important as the content. So the knowledge has to be delivered or transferred to the student through a pedagogy. So you need to be aware of both. Then comes the affective. Now, generally when a teacher has to excel in a class, it is the second part that is important. That is the affective or motivational competencies and belief. And this motivational competencies and beliefs comes when I know I'm confident of it. When I'm confident of it, you will see a different teacher inside a classroom. When you're not so confident, your motivation levels are very low. And on that day, you land up not so performing good in your class. So from there, you try to make a decision making and professional judgment. So if this is where I am, if this is my competency level, if this is the belief that I have about myself, I can teach, I can't teach, then I start making a professional judgment. What else should I do in order to achieve what I should be doing, right? Then comes teaching approaches. Then we have a lot of instructions on cognitive, social, a lot of OB that comes into picture because we are just not basic teachers. We are looking at higher order learning. We are looking at a lot of cognitive elements that happen within a teacher in order to do well in the classroom. And throughout, you will see that research experience is going to play a prominent role because the moment you do research, it's like the DNA of a baby. When somebody tells me about their research work, especially when they design a thesis or they come out with their PhD thesis, I always tell them that even if somebody had to ask you in page number 418, can you just tell me what was this table all about? You will be in a position to do it because you own it. It is your work. So anybody testing the DNA of your thesis will be successful in proving that it's yours. And trust me, this research that you would have spent on in your thesis gives you so much of confidence when you're actually doing a viva, or probably you have enhanced your knowledge in that specific area because you've done a lot of research. The same thing applies to classroom teaching also. Unless and until you have researched your subject well, unless you've read a couple of new articles, what are the new things that are happening? For example, when you're teaching a paper on banking, There is a new law which talks about the bankruptcy and insolvency code. How many of us are even introducing that into our classrooms? Do the children know? It is not in your it is not in your curriculum. It is not in the syllabus. But are we teaching them? Are we able to tell them at least that this is what it is? Now, for me to tell that in the class, I must be aware of it. So that's exactly what we are talking about research. Research does not just mean that you're doing it yourself. Reading it. Literature review actually enhances a lot of learning capacity in a teacher. And teacher learning also happens. So the entire process is an opportunity to learn. So this is the last part of it that I'm going to be picking up. The competency building, the road ahead. So what is it that we should do as a teacher in order to build the competency that the future institutions are going to look up at us? The current institution will go through a transition and will probably shed a skin or two in order to become the new institution that NEP is expecting them to be. And if you're not doing that, we're going to be left behind very soon. The first competency building as a teacher is continuous professional development. Please attend programs, training sessions, participation in seminars, workshops, conferences. Not all speakers may be great. Now, whenever I hear to a very boring lecture, I always think that I still have a learning out of that. Either I love something that they are saying and they are doing, they are particularly using a different methodology of teaching, and I learn from that. Or if it's a very boring lecture, I know what not to do in my class. Either ways, we are learning. So continuous professional development. For example, I'll tell you, I keep telling this to my colleagues also. AICT has a portal called ATAL, which is a free for all faculty development program. It's a 5 days program, which is free for everybody. You can choose to do 4 programs like that in a year. It's a beautiful way of understanding. And pan-India, there are multiple institutions giving you different, right from languages to technology, to commerce and management, to humanities, to OB, to leadership. You will see a whole lot of workshops that are lined up throughout the year. Create a login ID password for yourself. Just go to ATAL. It's AICT portal for teacher education. Please do apply. You can easily apply for about 4 of them in a year. 4 into 5, 20 days. You're going to have a beautiful journey for yourself. Whether you're the principal or whether you're an associate professor or a professor, I too completed 3 of the ATAL programs in this year. Who says that principal or vice principal or anybody head of the department does not require it? Of course we require it. We require it more than anybody else. Because if I don't have a vision, if I don't build a strategy for my institution, there's nobody else who will help me do it. So continuous professional education, please do it. Whether it is formally, informally, you are on LinkedIn, you may probably listen to a 20-minute lecture by somebody. You are doing a LinkedIn learning certification program. You're doing it in Udemy, whichever, but please do upskill yourself. The second one is adopting constructive pedagogies. There are beautiful pedagogies which are available. Some based on experiential, some based on experimental, some based on going to the market kind of a thing. Please be as innovative as possible in your pedagogy. Children will love it in your classrooms. The more you give them assignments, assessments off the campus, the more enjoyable a particular topic is going to be for them to learn. So this hands-on experience, dirtying yourself to learn something is the biggest experience, because education is all about experiential learning. Education is just not about a piece of paper. Education is all about the kind of value systems, the ethos, the experience that you carry in these 3 years or 4 years of your education life. The third competency as a teacher we should be building is an integrated and multidisciplinary. So today as a management teacher, I belong to commerce and management. I should be capable of talking about artificial intelligence. Of course I should be. Artificial intelligence, machine learning does impact banking and finance industry. It does impact HR. It does impact marketing. So I need to look at new technologies and make sure that I have an integrated multidisciplinary approach. So it is not sufficient. When I teach costing in my class, I always try to call somebody. For example, there's a small hotel next to my institution. And one of these lectures, I tried to get this gentleman back to my classroom. And he said, Madam, I didn't even pass my 12th standard. I said, no, sir, it's okay. You have a bigger experience called life, so please come. And there was a class that was going on about how do you set a price for a specific service or specific manufacturing product. Manufacturing product is very easy to define. You just X plus Y plus Z, you define your price. But in a service industry, I had to teach my children how are they going to define what is going to be the selling price. And then we brought about these two people, one a hotelier and one the gentleman who was selling idli vada next door. And it was a beautiful conglomeration where the pricing policies are defined by so many different parameters which are totally different from each other. One common ingredient was what goes into making that particular dish. But beyond that, there are so many more things that differed from each other. Now you can come out with major different pedagogies that can actually help you to build an interdisciplinary one. Building economics into your classroom, building say finance into your classroom, building marketing into your classroom, and arts, theater. And I have seen many institutions bringing in theater in their classrooms to teach the same concepts. Wonderful way you will see teachers and students enjoying. The next most important part that we need to really start working on is immersion with the industry. Immersion with the industry because you need to know what the industry is expecting. You need to do joint research with them. Probably immerse yourself in this corporate 1 week in a year. We'll start with 1 week in a year because when you have vacations, you can afford to spend 1 week in that particular company and make sure that you understand some new things that are relating to the subject matter. Research-based teaching. This is something that I have already spoken about. Please do inculcate research, however small it may be. You can have cuttings of different articles to start with. A review of literature is more than sufficient to start the first journey into research. Then, of course, you can do your primary research, exploratory research, experiential, whatever it is. You can define the research methodology that you like to do, but you will see that kind of change in the classroom teaching and the learning and the kind of the climate in your class will change when it is research-based teaching. Finally, specialization-based progression. It is time for us to start thinking on what would I like to be specialized for. Would I like to be specialized in tax? Would I like to be specialized in microbiology? Would I be specialized in psychology? And if psychology, what exactly in that? So the specialization-based progression is actually going to make you eminent teachers in the days to come. So please do focus on all these, and most importantly, the technology upskilling. Even today, how many ever times I have delivered a seminar lecture, I still was hunting around how do I share, because this platform was new to me. So technological upskilling is the order of the day. You will see a lot of blending happening in the days to come. You will see a lot of things that are going to change in the days to come when it comes to technology. So as a teacher, please upskill yourself when it comes to technology. Thank you so much. We have had a good 1 hour of talking, and I would be happy to ask any of the clarifications that you have or any questions that you have. I'll be happy to share that. I'll try my best to answer it though.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for giving us a spectrum of thoughts on teacher competence building, the importance of upskilling, and being a perpetual learner with a curiosity for research. Thank you so much for that.
Pleasure.
Now we will take up the questions, ma'am. We have already a few questions lined up in our chat box. And I also request the audience to put in your queries in the chat box so we can pose it to ma'am. Ma'am, I'll start with the first question.
Yes, please. Yeah. Yes, please.
Guest 70 is asking, students can ask me, why should I wait to complete 4 years if I can get a diploma in 2? If I leave immediately, I can get 2 years of work experience instead of classwork. In the Indian context, this seems a great probability.
Definitely. In fact, for all you know, somebody will, let me tell you this, ma'am. In the last 10 years, a lot of things have changed in the industry as such. We have never seen students being engaged in the industry after 10th, students being engaged in the industry after 12th. Today, if you have to work in a BPO and make a decent salary of 15,000, you don't need to do a degree at all. And to a large extent, if you see today, when there is an interview going on, there is a set of candidates that you will see from multiple, say, degree. You will see them from BA, you will see them from BCom, you will see an engineer sitting for the same interview. You will see a postgraduate also sitting for the same interview. Unless we change the way we are delivering, this is going to be the order of the day. You will see a student who will stop after PUC and say, why do I need to? All I have to do in life is to make money, which I'm already making. So what next? So unless we make the entire education system more enticing, unless we make it very engaging with the student, very meaningful for the student, and actually increase the domain knowledge that he has, this is definitely going to be a challenge. He may just quit after 1 year and say, diploma certificate is sufficient, I'm getting a job. He might just want to, but fortunately in India, I'll tell you, the parent mentality is not like that. Now, as parents, we are still holding hands of our children. Wait till they finish their post-graduation. And I suppose this will continue for another 10, 20 years, till the next generation become parents. I don't know. But till then, this is not a scenario that I'm expecting, though it's going to be a challenge. And you know what? There's a bigger challenge I'm expecting. For example, he does 1 year with me. After that, he is no more interested in doing a BBA in general management. He would like to do BBA in sports. So he moves to another college where BBA sports is available. After 1 year in sports, he will feel bored that, okay, sports, I wanted to explore sports, but then now I'm not interested in sports. I want to do something in aviation. And then he goes to the third college to do aviation. And because of this academic bank of credit, now he can move from any college to any college, any university to any university. So the whole idea is to see how you can give them a basket option, allow them to choose, but still make sure that you are able to focus with the vision of your institution. This is definitely going to be a challenge. That is the reason why we are talking so much about NEP, because it is a challenge for the teacher, challenge for the institution to make sure that your students stay with you over a long period of time and continue to complete their education. I hope I have answered this.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is by Jacinta Matthew. When we speak about holistic development, can we also give them an opening to be socially responsible?
Of course, ma'am, socially responsible or social responsibility, societal responsibility has already been focused a lot in the NEP actually. Now, to a large extent, we will see the students engaging with social elements. For example, now that we are designing our new curriculum, at the end of every semester, we have put one or the other socially relevant things. For example, when a student we have introduced a paper on sustainability. Now, when you have to prepare a paper on sustainability, we have ensured that a student will necessarily visit a village and try to understand how a sustainable ecosystem a village would have created for itself so that they don't engage with anybody else. So this socially relevant topic, the society sensitivity, is something that is extremely critical. Otherwise, how do I build value education? How do I build a socially sensitized citizen as a graduate? So it is definitely going to be given a lot of prominence in the NEP as well as in the institutions. Next, ma'am.
Yeah. We have another question. What are examples of some online resources, training centers for upskilling for teachers in particular?
Well, online resources, there are many, depending on what stream you are looking at. For me, say in commerce and management, we have a lot of them in terms of Harvard Business Review, IIM management reviews. Lot of these universities are allowing sharing of content with us. So you just need to have a membership. For example, you can read the best-in-class journals through ProQuest, or you may just have an Enlist with you, which still gives you a lot of possible number of articles that you can see. Lot of space is available for a teacher to learn. As I said, you can go through LinkedIn Learning, you can go through Udemy, you can go through Swayam, NPTEL, for that matter, as I said, Atal. All these are areas where you can actually learn a lot. As a teacher, there is no scope for less learning for us. You have to make sure, and as I said, today is a typical place for YouTube University kind of a scenario. Everything under the sun, the best in class lectures are available on YouTube. Best in class lectures are recorded and put in the form of a format, put in the form of an article. So there's nothing that is stopping us actually. And many of them also are free ones. You don't have to spend anything on that. If you want a certificate, you need to pay them. Otherwise, you just want to go through the program, there's nothing that you need to spend at all. So just be a lifelong learner.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
We agree to that. Lifelong learners, what every teacher needs. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The next question is by Professor Madhu. Quality research, publications, innovative pedagogy, and learning to ensue time and space is very crucial. Will NEP give the time required to focus on research and innovation?
Yeah. Now that NEP has very clearly put forth that you need to have specific time frame given to the teachers. In my first couple of slides, that's exactly what I mentioned, that NEP focuses on teachers' professional development. And when a teacher has to go through professional development, you need to give them time. You need to give them space. You need to give them resources. All three are important. It is just not about the time. Now, if my institution is not subscribing to ProQuest or any other Elsevier or whichever for that matter, then there is no way I can invest on my own. Because if I have to download each paper, it costs me about $10. I may not be in a position to download some 25 papers to read something. So the resources, the time, and the space is equally important for a teacher's growth in any institution for that matter. And here there is a small glitch. Now, what I mean to say is, now no institution will want to remain as a teaching-centric institution. Nobody. We would like to elevate ourselves to teaching come research. See, only research institutions are going to be very few in the country. For example, the IISc, IITs, IIMs, maybe they are the ones which will categorize under research universities, completely research based. Or in, you have transdisciplinary university in Bangalore. Now, these are ones which are focusing only on research. They won't do anything else. Teaching is very limited. 10% of teaching takes place there. Now, that's a very hard to find. Unless you get major funding into your institution, it is difficult for any institution to become a only research focused institution. So we are going to be somewhere in between. Now that in between, it is the institution. And as I said, no institution will want to remain as teaching focused institution. So in the days to come, you will necessarily see, I have already seen some of the good institutions giving a lot of prominence to research for teachers. In the sense, they have given them, for example, if I know that you are going to be publishing a paper, we are going to provide you with that kind of time frame with maybe a lesser number of number of classes for you. We probably help you with getting a membership of a particular institution where you have access to all the library facilities. If it's not available with me, all this will definitely come. It is just a matter of a little time. Have patience.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
The next question is also related to the previous one. Dr. Nebula is asking, how to develop a right research environment in an institution?
Yeah. The right research environment starts from an individual. Now, first, let me not bother about changing the community. I am going to be bothered about changing myself. So research starts from me. The next level where research can go to is in my classroom. Again, as I said, I can change, I can influence the student community better than my colleagues. So I move to the next level. And generally, I believe in this concept called entrainment. I love this word actually. What I mean by entrainment is, when you see, suppose you have 4 pendulums and you just move the pendulum at different points in time. For some time, all pendulums are moving in different paces. One pendulum is going left, one pendulum is going right. But after some time, you can actually experiment this. After some time, you will see that all the pendulums are moving in the same direction. That's entrainment. At one point in time, when a leader, when the institutional head sets a goal, sets a vision for the teachers about the research culture, it is bound to happen one day or the other. But as I said, that might take time. To have the entire research culture set in an institution may take some time, but it can always start from me. So when I start setting an example, when my students start setting an example, there's an instant competition that comes in, whether you like it or not. And that competition is healthy. It's not an unhealthy competition. So you will see that the other teachers are also interested to know what you're doing. How come your students are doing research, but in my class, they're not doing anything? Share the best practices. And you will see that this momentum might take some time, but when the momentum picks up, there's nothing stopping you. Next question, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Professor Maya Matthew, she's asking, ma'am, can you explain the identification of any one teaching pedagogy and its execution?
Teaching pedagogy, like let me give you my example, ma'am. And I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself in terms of my example because I probably don't have much time to talk about many others. Now, when I teach, I teach a paper on strategy and international business. And when I teach those papers, I'm very critical that they write a case study and come. And when I say write a case study, a lot of us are skeptical about it because when I tell them that they have to write something as a case study, it is very difficult for them to even visualize it. So let's take an example that I have sending my student. I have asked a student to prepare a case study about what are the possible problems they face in companies which have both imports and exports. So what this child does is he will choose any one entity. It could be a manufacturing company, it could be a retailing organization, any one of the organizations, however big or small. It could even be flowers import and export, which is there in Hebal. A student is actually in a position to go. So we import seeds, we export flowers, we export everything, vegetables, rice, grocery. We are into a lot of it. So you don't need to go into a big manufacturing organization to do this. So when he goes there, I ask him to actually have an interview with this person. It might take 2 days, 3 days, depending on the kind of proximity of that person. And then they come back and write to me like a storytelling. Now, when they start writing this case study by themselves, initially there is a hiccup. But my way of telling them is, when you can beautifully create stories for 22 pages and make me read that in an examination, writing a 2-page case study is not a big deal at all. So through a little motivation in the class, so we do a small drafting. And I take the help of my mentors, their mentors actually. And I request them, can you just go through those for the first draft? And my mentors are, very good enough to do that. And then the student comes back to me with a semi-final draft. And then it is going to help me understand. And trust me, my classes are far more better when I have used this pedagogy because there's nothing that I have to teach him. In fact, he will teach me. In fact, he's in a position to tell me for this particular sector, these are the things that the government is giving. For something else, the sector is something totally different. So the entire process of learning, that's why I specifically said, learning can be within the classroom also. So by the time they write a particular case by themselves, going to be teaching in the class. So what I do is I give them a pre-read. I have a 1-hour session with them first to give them a bird's eye view of what I'm going to be dealing with in this. And I give them a week's time to make that case study. And they come back and they start giving their presentation. So I have ensured that all these are taken care of. Number 1, they collaborate. Number 2, they try to negotiate because they have to request them to give them data. Number 3, they communicate. When they're negotiating, they're communicating. When they're presenting, they're communicating. Teamwork, because no one student is sent. It's normally a group of 2 or 3. So they know how to divide work, how to write work, how to write, how to present, who will be the team lead. And because when I am marking them, if the 3 students in a group, whoever is getting the best, so suppose it is on 10 marks, if one student gets 8, the rest of them also get 8. If the presenter is giving 5, the rest of them also get 5. So the teamwork, the team spirit, and most importantly, resilience, the capacity to fail but still get up and walk and still make sure that you're doing a good job inside the classroom. So a lot of good things come up when you're using a particular. This is just one example of my pedagogy. There could be hundreds of other pedagogies, trust me.
Yes, ma'am. So even I have read somewhere, even research happens when it is not a single person. Usually, two or three collaborate, and a good research happens.
True. New vistas are opening up. You see, no two people think the same way.
Yes, true, ma'am. Yes.
Yes.
So we go to the next question. It's by Professor Archana.
Mhm.
How far does NEP 2020 focus on value-based education?
Well, if you look at the tenor of the NEP, you will see a lot about value-based education. First, in terms of Indian culture, Indian ethos, you have already started seeing this change coming up in our history textbooks. A lot of discussions are going on about how young minds need to be taught in a positive fashion. Therefore, we are not going to be talking about who killed whom in history. We are going to be talking about who built what in the history. And there's a lot of difference in the way we teach the same. Instead of telling them the Battle of Panipat and saying who killed whom, it's always easy to teach a student what are the takeaways from such a big battle, how many lives were lost. So you teach them peace. So there is a lot of difference in the content and the way we are going to be delivering it in our classrooms. And any way that you see in LEP, we are talking about, number one, we're talking about the focus on mother tongue, saying that mother tongue is not bad. You need not have to learn English all the time. English is still taught in the class. Even recently, the engineering courses have been converted into colloquial languages. So you can see textbooks of engineering in Kannada. A lot of good things will come up. Then talking about the ethos, Indian education system, what existed a few centuries ago, all this has slowly gotten into the framework. So when you see the framework having values, ethos, etc., automatically the new curriculum that you will create will imbibe this framework, and within that framework you're going to have your syllabus. So which typically means that values and ethos will survive, will probably be ignited into a classroom teaching learning.
Yes, ma'am. Next is Dr. Govindraj M. He has two questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, a good teacher need not be a good researcher as well. Please comment. The next question is...
I'll finish that, ma'am.
Yeah,
Then you tell me.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Professor Govindan. A good teacher need not be a good researcher. A good researcher probably cannot be a good teacher also. You see, we are talking about two different, I would say, skill sets. The teaching element is more of the technical skills. You know, in management, we talk about three skill sets that every person should possess. So one is the technical skill set, the second is the human skill set, and the third one is the conceptual skill set. Now that applies to us also. Now, generally, when I see technical skill sets are the basic minimum. So you should know how to communicate. You should know the basics of the domain knowledge that you are going to teach in the class, and that's it. You should know a little bit of human skills because you need to control your class. You need to engage with them, keep them quiet for say 1 hour in the class. So second element is that HR or the human skills. The third one is the conceptual skill. That conceptual skill is not something that everybody can have. And that conceptual skill is all about dealing with ambiguity, trying to foresee something that is not there right now, the possibility of coming out with research topics or an innovative patent that the world has not seen. You see, this is a quality of a researcher. So there is a very rare combination that you will see, that you are a great researcher and a great teacher. I have dealt with several great researchers who probably have failed inside a classroom because they have abundant knowledge, but they probably haven't been great at teaching. So both of this is possible. So there is no requirement that you should, if you're a good teacher, that's why I said, now you need to map yourself and say, if I'm very bad in research, we can't be too bad in research. We may be somewhere in between. Maybe I can't produce 10 papers. I may be able to produce only 2 papers. If everybody else takes 6 months to write a paper, I might take 1 year to write the paper. But then I will write. We are not that bad in conceptual skills. But as you said, sir, there is definitely an imbalance in many of us. Some of us are very good in research. Some of us are very good in teaching. So this balance between the technical, human, and conceptual skills is something that you can work. Fortunately, you can work for it. So as if you're a good teacher, you can always become a good researcher. If you're a very good researcher, you can always hone up your skills to become a good teacher. Both ways it's possible.
Yes, ma'am. His next question is, are we ready to provide engineering and medical education in regional languages?
Yeah, this is a huge debate that is going on. But what we have to understand is, when I've had an interaction with the AICT chairman also, when this dialogue was going on about introducing engineering courses in the mother tongue or the regional languages, the idea is inclusive education. So we need to look at the positive side of it. Now, what they mean is, suppose you were a student who studied in your mother tongue till 10th standard or even 12th standard sometimes, and you came to, say, Bangalore to do a higher education, say engineering. There are high chances that you are probably reading and writing English altogether for the first time. So many students back out of it because they find this education system very difficult because they've never studied in English. So what engineering programs did was, they will definitely try to focus on English. English has not been removed. Please note, English is still there. But a student has a choice to understand and write in their mother tongue, to read in the mother tongue. So they are using several software to convert English textbooks to the mother tongue. Let me give you an example of hospital or medical. Now, in say a Bangalore city, people can understand multiple languages. Whether you speak in Kannada, Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, or English, they understand everything. But when you go to a place like, say, UP, Bihar, and a Bangalore bred student is going to practice in UP or Bihar, now their English will not help. It is the Hindi. Now you probably have to make sure that you understand Hindi, you learn to converse in Hindi, and you try to tell them, explain to him in Hindi. So what we are trying to do is let the students not be out of the education system because of language barriers. So the whole idea about bringing in regional languages in professional courses was to make education inclusive in nature. Bring everybody to the forum. So what if he doesn't know English? So what if he doesn't, or if he cannot read and write English? The idea is to know technically. For a civil engineer, you don't need to know English. For a doctor, of course, you need to know English, but then you don't need to converse in English. So that is the whole idea. Of course, it's going to take some more time for us to bring into that. But I see a lot of institutions in Tamil Nadu, in Andhra Pradesh are already doing that. You know, they're already doing their classes in Tamil. They're able to write in Tamil. They have created books in Tamil. I mean, that's a good way of including people, especially from the rural areas. Ma'am, next question.
Yes, ma'am. Next is by Professor Shailaja. She is asking, ma'am, in NEP, is there any provision for vocational courses?
Of course, that is one of the points that I mentioned, that higher education today is going to be a combination of higher education, professional education, and vocational education. You will see a lot of vocational education imbibed into our curriculum also. For example, when we talk about any specific course, let me talk about BCom program. Now, teaching them filing returns or teaching them GST, how to file a GST, is going to be a vocational training. So, for example, if a BCom student does not get into any job, all he can become is a GST consultant, and he can learn to earn for himself. Now, what is a vocation? Something that helps you to earn your livelihood. Now, that's exactly what these skill sets is going to come. So, I feel that there will be a standalone vocational education system also. For example, there will be institutions like ITI, which offers diploma in tools and mechanics. But there will also be vocational courses which will be imbibed into our curriculum. For example, in psychology, a vocational course could be in counseling or rehabilitation. Now, these vocational courses will actually help them to build or earn their livelihood in that particular section. Definitely, ma'am, I can vouch for you that this vocational training is going to be a part of our curriculum.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is by Professor Mamta. A very informative session, ma'am. What provisions does NEP provide for research apart from encouraging teachers to do PhD? There are,
Please.
Yeah, there are situations where research by a teacher stops after attaining PhD.
I completely agree with you, Professor Mamta. Mamta, right? Is that,
Professor
Mamta? I completely agree with you. Because when we do PhD, we believe that we are experts in research. But the contrary is true, that we are just equipped with the technology to do research now. We know the tools, techniques, mechanisms to do research. Let me tell you, at the center, there is a research, the National Research Framework that has been set up, and research funding will happen through them to the colleges, to the faculties. So apart from just becoming a PhD holder, there's going to be a huge interaction with the industry, and research funding will definitely flow. But the institution has to be equipped enough, accredited, and you have to prove your mettle to receive that research grants. But I am assuring you that a huge portion, this is supposed to be about 6% of GDP is earmarked for education itself. So in education, a lot of components come into the picture. So this is something that is going to be the future. And as I said, now there's a lot of statistics that is coming out for the first time as to how many research papers are being contributed by several top-notch institutions. Even the top-notch institutions haven't been able to produce those many research papers. China has the highest, USA has the highest. The research papers are not coming out of our country's top institutions, though they are in one of the top 100 in the world. And research, by default, has the least number of marks given for all of us because we probably don't have enough contributions to research. So this national research framework that we are talking about in NEP will actually give scope for teachers to apply for grants, and you will be able to do the research accordingly. Over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Bhavani, ma'am.
Good afternoon,
there are few questions in Kannada. I don't say it is a question. It is in fact an appreciation for your session. It's in Kannada, so I would want to read it out for you. Madam, education syllabus and system ಕಾಲಕ್ಕೆ ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಆಗುತ್ತಲೇ ಇದೆ. ನನ್ನ 24 ವರ್ಷದ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳು ಆಗಿವೆ. ಆದರೆ 2020 ಪಾಲಿಸಿ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಭಿನ್ನವಾಗಿದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲಾ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೂ ಒಂದೇ ದೋಣಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕುಳ್ಳರಿಸಿಕೊಂಡು ಫಸ್ಟ್, ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಥರ್ಡ್ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇಳಿಸಿ ದಡ ಸೇರಿಸುವ ಯೋಜನೆಯಾಗಿದೆ.
Honestly, that's a very satirical way of putting it across. Actually, we are giving a student a basket option. Idu yav mattadvargu idu agutte annodu, it is a question mark. I don't even deny that. But at least there is a starting point, there is a push, there is a momentum. The idea is that many students, the problem is the gross enrollment ratio. We are pathetic in the gross enrollment ratio, especially at higher education, for many reasons possibly. One is because of the urban-rural divide. Second, because of the cost involved in higher education. Third, it could be lack of incentives to a student. For example, even though government is trying its best, in a government college, a girl education is totally free. In a government college, the student pays very less fees. But our people do not look at only one element. So they are looking at multiple options. So the dropout ratio is high. The gross enrollment ratio is very low. And thereby, what happens is at the end of the day, we are not having many students coming into the education forefront. And that is one of the reasons why we said, let's start. If after 1 year, we don't want to do it, let's discontinue. And it's not just talking about discontinuing. Please note, it is not about just the exit option. They're also talking about the entry option. That means this boy can do it for 2 years, take a break for 1 year, come back and do the next year. So that way we are trying to make this entire policy as student friendly as possible. That is the idea. But how this is going to take shape is for us to see, is for us to implement, watch out and make sure that it happens in the right spirit.
Dr. Shantaraju says, Upayukta Mahiti Madam, Dhanyavadagalu. And there has been a lot more appreciations poured in for your session, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Dr. Govind Raju has a question here. If faculty members are bombarded with admin work, still he or she has to publish, conduct FTPs, create MOOC, etc. Is it justified?
I'm hoping none of my colleagues are listening to this question now. Because my colleagues will also probably be thinking on similar lines. I completely empathize with you, Professor, because we are living in a scenario where accreditation is mandated. For you to have a good grade, you need to do multiple things. And I have always been complaining about one small thing with the Higher Education Council, that giving us 90 days as a semester and expecting us to do multiple things with a student in these 90 days, we are losing balance. We do not know whether we should focus on academics and do justice there, or should I focus on extra and co-curricular activities and do justice there. Whatever we are doing inside the college, the person doing it is the teacher only. It is not anybody else. If you are good at delegation, you would have done that. If you're good at delegation, some of your students could also help you in disseminating information, doing some work for you. Probably that way you could reduce your burden. In fact, I do understand, especially government teachers have a lot of work from the time the pandemic has set in. I should say they're doing a lot more than what as a private college we are doing. They have to upload their LMS every day. They have to make sure that they are up to date in everything. They have to complete their classes. A lot of accountability has set in. So at the end of the day, we have to juggle around with many things. But I'm hoping if technology can set in at the campus management system. Learning management system is one element. I'm talking about campus management system. Probably technology can serve the purpose. We'll be able to lessen the burden. Number one, through delegation, involve students in your work. You can have about a set of 5 students who can help you with this. So a lot of work can get delegated. Number two, bring in technology to do your work so that you can uncomplicate a lot of things and start doing it. And one thing that I have noticed is a lot of things, a lot of times we become very lazy and we procrastinate a lot. We tell students, but when it comes to us, we don't walk the talk. So what happens? We tend to procrastinate. We don't submit our reports in time. So what happens? You're piling up everything at the end of the week, end of the month, end of the semester. And that is definitely burdensome. So we need to decompartmentalize our day, see what all has to be done, then create proper time frames. So you're in a college for say 8 hours in a day. Please prioritize yourself and start working. So I believe in this way of planning my day. I do a complete plan the previous night to see what part of my day is going to be creative in nature, what part of my day is going to be logical in nature. Logical just needs time, no thinking is required. Creative requires a lot of time, and that makes my day completely filled up. So we need to plan ourselves well, is my way on it. Administration, academic administration especially, we are far away from taking it out of our system, sir. It's going to be there. We need to know how to manage it.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we have reached the end of the question answer session. Our principal also says that it was a very informative and a very useful session.
Thank you so much,
Thanks
sir.
to you. Over to Professor Evangeline.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am, for that definitely a wonderful and very, very informative session on curriculum and teacher competence, building for a new regime. Thank you so much. I believe and I am assured that the entire session has grabbed our attention to the information that you have shared. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am. I take this opportunity to thank the principal, the vice principal, and the IQAC coordinator and the entire team at SFS for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I wish to stay connected and let's take this collaboration forward.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much. Yes, so as we've come to the end of the FTP, day 4, I request Professor Ramandeep to propose the vote of thanks.
Good evening to one and all present here. On this wonderful evening, I would like to present the vote of thanks. Today's session was very informative and knowledgeable. Ma'am has thrown light on various aspects of curriculum and teacher competence building, which we entire teaching fraternity will use for the betterment of youth. Thank you, ma'am. I thank all the participants from across India for making this day a grand success. Once again, I thank you all for your sincere attention and participation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Announcement. The feedback link is posted in the chat box and the same will be shared in the WhatsApp groups as well. Please do the needful by filling it. Feedback link posted in the chat box and shared in the WhatsApp groups. Also kindly note, tomorrow would be day 5 of our FTP and we will be having a discussion on the topic Imagining an Educational Policy for Affiliated Colleges. Tomorrow's session would be on Imagining an Educational Policy for Affiliated Colleges. We thank each and every one of you for being a part of the FTP today. Hope it was a wonderful session and you did have a great time this afternoon. Thank you, and we hope to meet you again tomorrow. Have a great evening ahead. Thank you once again.